Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Podcast Assemble, the show where you come for your regular geeky download. My name's Tommy, and I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by my friend and co-host from across the pond. It's DL. How's it going, buddy?
How's it going, dude? I'm tweaking out, man, because I heard you could catch COVID from books, and I like to read, so this is a big threat.
Do you go to a lot of libraries at the minute? Is that what you're doing? You spend your time in libraries?
Yeah, not anymore. Absolutely not.
So for context, before we came on the show, I just flicked on Instagram and I went on the New South Wales Sydney Instagram page, and it did one of those like, ask us anything about COVID and we'll give you the right answer. But the first question was, could you catch COVID from books? And like, who asks that question?
It'd be pretty ironic if a book killed me because I like them so much.
I imagine your death is going to be like, have you ever seen that episode of Rick and Morty where they go to Blitz and Chits, and it's like this crazy space futuristic like arcade, and they play this game Roy. I don't know if you remember it.
Vaguely.
Roy, it's like it's like this VR headset thing, and they play out Roy's entire life, and at the end he goes back to the carpet shop and he falls off the ladder and dies. I imagine you're going to be the same thing. You'll get to a ripe old age and you'll think you've done really well, and then you'll reach up for a book really slowly, old-agedly, and then this huge tome just falls down and whacks you on the head.
Of course, it's a huge jump. Or, the COVID bug will jump out.
Well, yeah, it's talking of COVID, my partner actually has it at the moment, which really sucks considering I'm not there to, bring her chicken soup and stuff. So, I mean, at least I've not got it.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, man, you're pretty lame at this point. It means like you are very unsociable. No, I know you've got other reasons, but I do think it's funny the people that haven't gotten it yet. It's like, oh, we got it. It's like, well, you fucking suck, dude.
Dude, I'm like Neo from the Matrix. Who said this? I'm like fucking dodging bullets everywhere. Like,
get outside. You need a tan.
Yeah, what's been happening, buddy? What have you been up to? Like, other than getting this beautiful tan that I can't see.
Yeah, to be fair, I've been pretty freaking busy, but it's hopefully done, and I won't bore everyone with work. But I haven't even. So I was like the crazy part.
That's the third week in a row, buddy. That's the third week in a row.
Mate, fourth, man. I was like working during while I had COVID. But the crazy part is like I've been busy because I was at the very end of a Halo game. Like I could tell I was getting to the end of the campaign, and then like work's just kicked off, and I just haven't been able to play it in like 3 weeks. And like that would just in any other scenario or point in time of like my life where a Halo game came out, that would just not be an acceptable outcome. Like I wouldn't be able to
still
put
an
it
acceptable outcome.
But like obviously it was like because here we are.
What's happening in the campaign? Like, is it good? Like, give me some overview.
Dude, it's been really good. It's been really fun. Like the gameplay's fun, the campaign's fun. Not because the story is like immensely better. It is slightly better. There's more mystery.
Okay. Oh, good.
There's more mystery, and the two characters are like, it's more character driven. There's two characters that are new, that are fun. But the villains are kind of again where they're lacking. Like when most stories fall down, it's the villains, and they have a little bit more character. Like they have a little bit more going on. But the coolest part about it is more that there's just these boss battles that Halo has never had before, and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Sounds like it's. Well, we'll get into this in a moment. It sounds like it's gone down the sort of Doom 2018 version, which is very much that sort of big boss battles and epic fighting. Dude, I feel terrible. You asked me when I first got back to the UK, you said, what's exciting you about being home and stuff, and I literally froze on the spot. I was like, oh crap, I thought this question might have come up. And I was like, oh yeah, like it's really great to hang out with my mom, and like I love taking the dogs and stuff. What I didn't tell you was that I've been actually getting to connect with my nephew who was born during COVID.
That's true.
I hadn't met the entire time, and now I finally have met and hung out.
Is he like 2 now?
No, he's like 1, and he was 1 in December, I think. So like he's 1, and he's he's growing fast, man. Like they grow quick at that age. I mean, he's gonna be taller than my partner soon. He can pretty much reach door handles now, so he's at that stage. But it's just been like,
so he's reached Bruges level.
Yeah. Well,
my cat can open doors.
Anyway. I think your cat is significantly more intelligent than most humans, let alone a 1-year-old. But yeah, man, like it's been super great being back. But before we get into it, if anyone would like to jump around, there will be time codes in the description. as always. I love to put them in there so you guys know when there's going to be spoilers or when you can jump to different bits. If you want to hear us banter about our day, me talking about stuff that I've forgotten like I just have, feel free. Otherwise, you can jump to the main topic, which this week, once again, I think is a doozy and I'm really excited to talk about. But what have you been up to this week, buddy, other than, working your ass off?
Look,
or working your ass off?
Not much, man. I'm working my ass off. My ass has been worked off.
I worked this out, sorry, by the way, recently. I think there are very specific words within the English and American language that, I mean, they are different languages, let's be perfectly honest. But there are ones that English people just cannot pull off. And there's ones that Americans just cannot pull off. And ass is one of them. Like, if I say ass, I sound like an ass. Whereas if you say it, it sounds natural. But you can't say arse, which is what we say. So, yeah, exactly. You sound like you're trying to put a bad accent on.
It just I sound like a moose. Like, arse.
Arse. Sound like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think about that. But I also just would never say arse. I always thought it was super weird. I was like, there's no R?
Why would you?
What's going on?
Well, there is the way we spell it, A-R-S-E.
You literally spell it that way?
Yeah, so it's a literal word.
Like you wouldn't even say ass. You would spell out arse.
I mean, it's two separate words, and I guess the way the UK dialect works, arse makes more sense by the way we
I guess that makes sense.
Phonetically pronounce things, whereas you guys say ass. And it's like there's about 6 different A's in there, all said in different tones.
Fair. Anyway, I watched the SpiderMan Homecoming, which, with Gail, because she's like, I really want to watch the new Spider-Man. Everyone's talking about it. I was like, well, I'm not just going to let you watch that. You have to at least watch the first 3 of this, or the first 2 of this, iteration of Spider-Man.
I think this is an opportunity, actually, for yourself. You've never watched the Andrew Garfield ones, am I right?
I haven't, no.
Maybe you could find some time in this, all the time you have at the moment, because you're clearly really, really being lazy at the moment and not doing anything.
I've got.
You could try and squeeze in at least one of the Andrew Garfield ones.
I would be down. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll get her hooked on these 2. And I'll do the next one with Tom Holland, and then I'll be like, okay, before this, we have to go back and watch the Garfield ones.
Nice.
Not really the Tobey. Like, we could watch the Tobey ones, but I just think
I've seen them a million times.
I have. I don't really want to, and I think it's gonna be a hard convince for her. So I'm just like, do I need to?
So they're quite earnest, the Tobey ones. It's tough to go back and watch them now, considering how Marvel movies are these days. So like the MCU has made it so that it feels real. Like the conversations people are having feel like real conversations. Whereas when you go back and you watch these movies and it's real earnest, and you don't get the feeling that it's a
It
real.
feels fake.
Yeah, it feels like a
it feels like it's meant to be a moment. Yeah,
that sounds really stupid because it obviously is a script, but it all feels scripted. You're like, this doesn't feel natural. Whereas the new ones, like all of it does.
No, that makes sense. Look, I was just like stoked to watch it because I hadn't seen it in a while, and I knew
for sure
that she would like it, and she did. And the funny part, she kept being like, "Well, I don't understand. Like, what happened? Like, how did he get his powers? Why don't we see that?" I was like, "Oh, don't make me explain why they didn't do that, because you're just gonna get bored." You see,
well,
there was this dispute about Sony and.
It's ironic that she doesn't want to watch the older ones, or she wouldn't have watched them with you, and now she's like, "But how did he get?" It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, but like, well, because it's like, you trust me, if you had seen the other ones, you wouldn't want to see that story again. You'd be glad they skipped it. Yeah.
Well, she might just see some of it if she does watch the latest one. Spoilers for Spider-Man: Far From Home, maybe.
I mean, do they show it a bit?
No, they don't.
I don't remember.
But like spoilers for No Way Home. They at the end of it, like they do the whole with great power comes great responsibility from Aunt May.
That
she
part,
does it instead, right? Yeah, of course. That's midway through-ish, sort of. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
End.
So you what? So she enjoyed it then?
She did, and I was.
Is that just
it makes me intrigued. Like, are they maybe gonna ever explore his background when it happened later, or do you think that's just not gonna happen with him?
Good question.
Maybe like even
great question.
Like flashbacks or something like that. No reason to, I guess, but
I don't think they need to. Like,
I don't either.
You know what I mean? Like,
but
I think he's got to a point now where he is evolved kind of past that necessity. Like, you don't need to have that in the movie anymore. Like, he is now his own character. We all know who Spider-Man is. I've said this before, like, I like how the video game did it and would be interested in seeing a version where he is older, like he has aged up a little bit in terms of literally Tom Holland's character. Give him a couple of years off, you know what I mean? Let him make Uncharted 7 and 12. and then and then bring him back. But
do you think he's gonna meet a Harry Osborn?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely in the near future of this.
I think that'd be cool.
Oscorp. I don't know about Harry Osborn specifically, but definitely Norman Osborn. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it sort of in the way that the video game had done it, as in like he knew Harry Osborn from when he was maybe younger in school, and Harry Osborn had gone away to do something somewhere else, and he was off, I don't know, on a school trip, or he'd moved away for a while, but Oscorp was always there in the background,
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I watched.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I heard there was I don't think what else I played a lot of Halo way back when, but it's all outdated now. So I'll let you talk about what you've done. What have you
I think
done,
you'd be interested
dude?
in a couple of these bits actually. What
Tell
have you
me,
done, dude?
Thomas, what have you done lately? I will listen.
I love this energy.
Gladly.
I was molded by it. Are we just going to be Bane for the rest of the episode? That could be a real boring episode for people.
Carry on.
Show me his body. Yeah, literally, we could do this all day. I did a couple of actually really interesting things this week. One of which I think you'll be interested in. First and foremost, I started watching a thing on YouTube. It's called Nerdstalgic, right? So it's this sort of, and I watch a lot of these on YouTube, and I don't usually bring them up, but I found this one particularly interesting. They do like throwbacks to like, oh, what happened with this series, or what was the go with X and Y. And this one was, of course, it was on Power Rangers in the background to Power Rangers, and it was just like a 15-minute breakdown. They do all kinds of stuff, right? This was just one that I spotted on their channel, and I actually, for once, think the guy's pretty good, and he's earnest enough and kind of sarcastic enough without falling into the trap of everything has to be a joke. So he's actually pretty good. He's quite good to watch, and he's just got this page full of them. So one thing I love is like a good YouTube channel, man. I know so many and follow so many, but if any of our listeners, they do have any recommendations on YouTube channels, hit us up, because I need a new one. I am busting through YouTube content at the moment at a stupid pace. So hit us up at Podcast Assemble on Instagram and let us know.
Please do. I feel like the only time I go onto YouTube is when I get into like a Joe Rogan hole.
I bet now I probably listen and watch more YouTube, because I actually get it now. Like, so there's this, I actually have the paid version, and I genuinely probably watch more YouTube now than I do Spotify.
Oh, yeah, didn't you send me the hack?
Yes, let's not talk about that here, because I don't want it to go away mysteriously.
Okay,
there's a hack for how you can get YouTube Premium very cheap, but I don't want it to magically disappear because it's out in the open. So we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. Anyway, as if like Google would know.
Yeah, who knows? Well, I mean, they literally like have so many bots out there.
They literally scrub the web. Yeah, so they could be listening to us now.
They could do it, man. They listen to us all the time. I did do one other thing I think you'll like super quickly. We've talked about the Amazon Prime series A Wheel of Time a couple of times, and I did finally get around to watching the first episode, and it's all right. It didn't really like grab me in the way like a really interesting, well-budgeted show like a Game of Thrones or just any HBO thing really.
Well, think about the first episode of Game of Thrones. It was so fucking like metal, bro. It was like a fucking. It was a great episode, right? Yeah. I wonder. So I'm curious if this that this didn't live up to that is interesting.
No. Well, I would probably recommend or say I assume this has. I'd say it has a higher budget than the Game of Thrones initial episodes did, but I just feel like the HBO content in itself is just aimed at a more mature audience. They just don't. They just throw you in, right? Like that first Thrones episode. There's no fucking around. It's you're in the forest with the White Walkers, and they're like stalking you like a horror. Whereas this, for me, it had sort of the production value of like a pretty good like BBC fancy show, like a Merlin or Three Musketeers type show. I don't know how much about you know about them, but like they're good and they're good. They've got a good budget, but they've just kind of got this thing about them that makes me think, oh, this isn't necessarily like for adults. This has like an edge to it that will make it sort of appeal to kids as well.
Which one does? The Wheel of Time?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like these BBC shows I'm talking about, I feel like it has that sort of edge to it as well. It's got a lot of bloodshed and there's a lot of that sort of stuff in there too, which obviously, would aim it towards adults more than kids, but I just think the way it's written and the way it's shot and the way it's just too crisp for me. Like I like it when this type of fantasy show has a bit of edge to it and maybe a bit of like grayness to it. And I don't know, are you still going to watch it?
I will watch it eventually, but I kind of want to read the books first. And I think we talked about this already, so I'll be quick.
Yeah.
But I just want to, I'm not going to read those books for a while. Like I'm saving those ones for some time where I have a lot of...
when they're going to fall off the shelf and kill you?
Exactly. For when I want to get some COVID.
Round 2.
And I get the COVID from the pages. No, I'm curious what you think about it. As you like, a lot of people claim it's one of the best out there. So I don't know what that has to do with the series.
That's why I'm holding judgment. Yeah.
I've heard some fans are not super stoked on like certain choices they've made.
Okay, all right. I'm not 100% on all the actors at this moment, so it's a case of I'm gonna give it a couple more episodes. Give it its due, man. Like I can't just watch one episode and go, "Fuck this is crap." I'll give it time.
I mean, like every series has like people that are like, "Fuck this! It's not like the books." Like, but I've heard this is like significantly, like a strong contingent. Similar, like I don't think if you watch the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones, people would be all that pissed. Like most people were like, "Fuck, this is a really good adaptation." Like,
well, I think that's the difference. I think it's a case of it's a really good TV show that is an adaptation of the books, right? Yeah. So like I watched that first 3 seasons maybe without having really any idea about the books. Same. other than maybe the twist at the end of the first season. And because it's such a good TV show, you don't need to think about the books. Whereas with this, it's that kind of, I feel like from the first episode, it's a case of without knowing the books, without knowing some of the lore at least, I'm a little lost, and I can tell it's an adaptation of something else rather than it just being a good TV show.
Totally.
And the last thing I've been doing this last week was, I think I mentioned last week, I finally got The Witcher 3, and I've been putting a little bit of time into it. And it's funny because I've probably put in a good like 10, 15-ish hours, a sizable amount for people our age to be playing a video game.
Barely made a dent.
Well, I realized that as I turned it off yesterday, that I've just got to the bit I got to last time I played it. So I've played the same amount of the video game. I'm like, oh, all right.
I to be honest, since we've watched the new Witcher, I've been like wanting to play the game.
Yeah, well, that's it.
It's like it's reignited my desire to finish the game because I never finished it. I got pretty close.
Well, I don't think many people do.
Well, no, so there's like all these expansions as well that are apparently better stories than the original game. Like a lot.
Well,
of
I've got the Wild Hunt.
So.
That's the one I've got. The Wild Hunt is the one that everyone goes on about as if
that's the original one. But they have expansions.
I thought that was an expansion.
They have expansions after the Wild Hunt that continue the story.
Okay, I don't think I need more story to this game. I think there's enough to this game already.
That's what I was thinking, but now I'm like kind of into it. I'm like, fuck, I actually want to go play it again. But again, no fucking time.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Minor spoilers for the second season of The Witcher. At the end of the show, we see Ciri's been hunted or being chased by the Wild Hunt, right? And that's sort of what the beginning of the third game is setting up, that you're having to go on this quest to find her, to save her from the Wild Hunt, basically. And I have no idea what the Wild Hunt is at this point. So I'm excited to learn a bit more about that and how that might affect, the TV show and, Ciri in this story. So I'm interested. Like it's kind of got me hooked enough. Like I'm not a massive fan of the gameplay. Like you can tell it's a little dated now. It's a bit janky, but like it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. I like the one thing is like for how heralded. Yeah. Heralded. You're the one that corrects my words.
I'm not your dictionary today. Come on, man. You've been awake all day. I've been awake for no time.
Tommy, that is fair, but I'm also very exhausted. Anyway,
Spaceman.
The game. What was I gonna say, man? The fucking
heralded.
I totally forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, the fighting is terrible.
Yeah, it's not great.
Like it's not terrible. Like there's a certain element of fun to it, but it just doesn't feel like it just feels a bit. It doesn't feel smooth. It doesn't feel like it's got like weight to it.
A lot of it also is the camera angle, I find as well. Like a lot of times I'll be finding
they should just stick with like a full like behind the shoulder view.
Yeah,
find a way to do it. And it almost turns into a different game when you fight, and it shouldn't feel like that. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I'm with you on that because like you'll be fighting and out of nowhere the camera will have flipped sides and you'll be like, it's in front of you, and you're like, I'm confused. I was looking at the thing a minute ago. Where is it? And yeah, it makes it kind of more challenging.
I think the reason they do that is because there is a lot of like skill and dynamic to it, where like you fight multiple groups. You have to like know where people are, and if it's an over the shoulder view, you can't. But there's got to be a middle ground. Anyway,
I just throw fire at them, stun them a little bit, and then I attack them. That's all I do every time, and it works every time. I thought like
the stun is overpowered.
No, it's the fire stuns them a bit as well. So if you use the fire, it hurts them and stuns them. So I've started using that.
If you beef up the stun, dude, people literally just go flying.
Oh, really?
A joke. Yeah, like through the air. Like anyway. We should move on.
Speaking of gaming news, did you hear this week? And I've got some fantastic news this week, and I think you're going to enjoy this one, mainly because it's ridiculous. And I thought maybe we'd bring back your weird gaming news section just for 1 week. How does that sound?
Sounds great, mate.
Well, did you hear that in the world of gaming, there is an FPS in the works, actually by a fan. So it's a fan-made FPS. However, it is a game where you can hunt down and shoot Pokemon. Have you heard about this?
Oh God!
Like,
no.
I've seen clips of this and it looks hilarious. Like, genuinely ridiculous. You are running through like a forest, and then I don't know, like a Charizard runs up to you or something, and you've got to like shoot a certain amount of times.
Oh my God!
It looks great.
I feel like that'll get shut down for sure.
The sad news about this is exactly that. It appears to have become the prey, because apparently Nintendo are looking to shut down the project, which is sad, man. I like when new inventive things come out.
I mean, it's fair. They don't want their fucking Pokemon to be just like shot on YouTube. Like,
what's out there? It's out in the wild now. You can see it on YouTube. You can see him shooting Mewtwo, I believe. I don't know all of the Pokemons.
Well, that seems shooting a Mewtwo seems fair.
Yeah, isn't he the angry one? I'm sure he's the angry one.
He's not a nice one.
There's lots of nice ones though. Keeping on the gaming news trend, did you also hear this week that EA Respawn Entertainment, they're rumored to be working on no less than three Star Wars games?
3 Star Wars games?
Yeah, and we haven't had a Star Wars game in a little while.
Is that like the Jedi one? There's a Squad Fighter one, and then probably a Fallen Order. I got all 3, I bet you.
No, close. There's a sequel to Fallen Order that's coming out. There's going to be an FPS, apparently.
Ooh.
Which I assume is going to be in the sort of vein of like your, what was it,
Battleground or whatever.
Battleground or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And an XCOM style game, which is like a strategy game where you'll be like, oh, this group needs to go over here and attack these guys. So,
oh wow, so it's 1 for 3.
1 for 3, not your best odds, but would you dive into any of them?
I would play the FPS, Avi.
Oh yeah,
I would play. What was the first one?
The Fallen Order.
The Fallen Order. I want to play. The sequel.
I want to play the first Fallen Order
and the first.
My only problem with those Star Wars games is that you have a lightsaber, right? And in canon, lightsabers can pretty much kit through anything.
You've complained about this before. Yes,
I know, but tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, it's true.
Why can a stormtrooper take 12 hits from my lightsaber that can cut through anything?
I mean, it is a bit dumb. I agree.
I think we've talked about this before, but I think if they made a really tiny tweak to the canon just for the video games, you could make that work. So it's a case of the stronger you are as a Jedi, the stronger your lightsaber is in terms of what it can cut through. So like when you're a low level Jedi, you don't have a powerful enough force.
Yeah, because it's tied to your force.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's tied to your what are the Star Wars fans?
Tied to your force.
It's tied to your midichlorians or whatever.
Yes. The midichlorians. Oh god, they're terrible. But that's how you could make it work. And I think but they can't do that now. They can't retrospectively go in and change all that. I don't know if you heard this week, but speaking of the Wheel of Time, Disney Plus is apparently looking to move forward with an adaptation of Percy Jackson's Lightning Thief as a TV series. Now, I know they tried to do this as a movie probably 3, maybe 5-ish years ago, and it was apparently pretty terrible. But this one's apparently going to be a more faithful adaptation, which is going to make fans go crazy. So, do you know anything about The Lightning Thief? Have you read these books?
No, I haven't.
Would you watch an adaptation on screen of a book series you have no idea about?
Yes. What is it about? Is it just like a fantasy novel?
Yes, it is, essentially. I think he's something like Zeus's son, or I honestly have
Is it the Percy Jackson series?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. My brother used to read it.
Oh yeah,
as a kid.
Maybe I can do this with your brother next time. We can give a bit of insight.
It's like mythos and mythology and fun shit like that.
Is he going to do as a theme anytime soon?
No. I was going to do a Bane voice, but I couldn't think of what to say.
Speaking of that, actually, I've actually been working with a friend of the show. I'm not going to say anything yet, but on just a potential little remix of our theme tune, just a little 8-bit version. Yeah, a little 8-bit version. A friend of the show reached out and wanted to know if we could, they could do an 8-bit version for us. So maybe if we're doing a gaming episode, we can bring the 8-bit version along. Yeah. I think it sounds cool to me. So why not? Well, speaking of the news, that's not a good segue. Did you hear this week that #MakeTasm3, the Amazing Spider-Man 3, was trending on Twitter with a lot of people calling for Andrew Garfield to get another shot at doing the Spider-Man role? Well, while this was happening at the same time, we also had an interview happening with the 3 Spider-Mens, who I guess by now everyone knows because the posters are out there. And so Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. And Tobey Maguire was saying that he doesn't feel his chapter of being Spider-Man is closed. He wants to come back and redo the role. What do you think about that?
Fucking Sony is just so stoked about this.
Yeah. Oh my God. So
they're just like, fuck it, we'll do all 3. Like, and meanwhile, so I thought you were gonna say this. Meanwhile, an interview with Deadline, fucking Tom Holland's like, the truthful answer, like about, if he's gonna come back with to do more movies, is I've done a whole press tour where all I do is lie. The truth is, you're not going to like the truth. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. I love this character, and I know that I'm not ready to say goodbye, but if it's time for me to say goodbye, then I will do so proudly, knowing that I achieved everything I wanted to do with him.
He's coming back, like, regardless.
Of course he's coming back, but it's obviously a contract negotiation thing, and at the same time as this is happening, Sony's getting all these other people saying, I'm down to be Spider-Man. They can just lowball Tom Holland.
I don't think they could ever do that. They just couldn't do it. I reckon they'll use Tom Holland in one more MCU movie to bring in Miles Morales, and then really sparingly, and maybe the way Tony Stark was used in like a mentor role down the line. Like just
it's annoying. I like him in the MCU. Just let them have Tom Holland.
But I don't think it works like that.
That's annoying.
It is annoying. Well, anyway, did you hear this week? Speaking of MCU. Did you also hear this week? I think I texted you about this, actually. It was really funny because I was sat in my living room watching the news, which is something I don't regularly do, especially local fucking news. And it turns out that where I'm from in the UK, Yorkshire, if anyone has guessed my accent, has become a hub for the new Marvel Secret Invasion TV show. And it just so happens that the likes of Samuel Jackson and Emilia Clarke were just hanging out down the road from where I live. Literally about a 15-minute drive from where I am, there's like a pizza trattoria, and Samuel Jackson was just in there for a cheeky meal.
Did you see him?
As you do. I didn't see him, but it was on the news, and I was like, this is really fun. And they got a bunch of pictures of them on set, and it's literally on my doorstep. I couldn't have been any closer and not had any idea this was going on. I was wondering from that, have you ever met a celebrity?
Yeah, I have. I've met a few.
God, you don't sound really enthused about that. Jeez.
No, I mean, it's just like I grew up in Los Angeles, so like you just see people. I didn't really like.
Oh, I grew up in
Los
Angeles.
I mean, you're gonna say that. I met I was at a Dodger game, and you remember Turk from the Scrubs?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Donald Faison, absolute legend.
So I was coming up from I had good tickets this time because my dad got it. Not that our normal ones aren't; they're pretty good, but we were behind the dugout, and he got offered them from someone, and I was going to go get I don't know, Coke or pretzel or something.
Hot
and I was
dog?
coming back with my arm full of food and soda, and I just look. I almost drop it, and I look up, and I almost had run into Turk. His name's not fucking Turk. I don't know what his name is.
Donald Faison.
And I just look up, and I'm like, "Holy shit, Turk!" And he smiles at me. He's like, "Fucking idiot!" Smiles, gives me the eye nod.
Stop talking.
And just walks by, and I was just like, "Oh wow, I fucking blew that."
Amazing.
Well, imagine you're just looking down at your feet, almost dropping something, and then putting your head up, and you just see fucking Turk. What are you gonna say?
Oh man,
it's Turk.
You'd be like, Eagle.
Yeah, Eagles. Or what are the other things they do? They have a bunch of shit.
Sorry about it, man. That show is literally my university youth. That is what I grew up with. I love those shows, and it was really funny. I've obviously, like I said, I've been at home for the last few weeks, and I've had a big clear out of all my stuff. I'm I don't need any stuff. I've got DVDs and CDs. Who uses CDs? DVDs and CDs running back for years. And I had pretty much all of the seasons of Scrubs on DVD. And I was like, begrudgingly getting rid of them. I was like, oh, maybe I could just keep one of these. It's like, no, it needs to go.
What do you know? But where is that on streaming wise? Surely someone's bought the rights.
It's on there somewhere.
Could have.
It's definitely on one of them. I can't remember. In Australia, I can't 100% remember. It might be Binge, maybe. But I don't think I've ever actually met a celebrity, like in IRL.
Really? I've met a couple. I met what's the guy's name that's like Brock Lesnar?
Oh, really?
Met him.
What's he like in real life?
Large.
I bet.
Large person.
Is he as much of an ass, or is he just like...
He's pretty chill.
Okay, cool.
I just, what's he going to say to me?
It's
I'm just some skinny guy that doesn't fight in MMA. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
You probably have literally nothing in common.
I think he's gone back to the WWE, I believe, from something I've seen. So he is now back in that, making all the monies. But the only one I've really met is, funnily enough, when I was the one time I've ever been in LA when I was like 21.
Well, there you go. Fuck off.
I haven't met them. Let me finish. I was in a hostel at the time. I was walking to a party, and I walked past this. How to describe it? It was just like a closed event, basically. Like you couldn't get anywhere near it. There was security everywhere, but there was an ambulance outside, and they were bringing someone out on like a stretcher, just completely covered in a sheet, so you couldn't see who it was, like to hide their identity, basically. Sitting up, they were fine.
Yeah.
And walking behind it was Jason Segel, who is in How I Met Your Mother, and all those programs. And it was great. Yeah, it was a launch party for I Love You Man. I think it was that year. So it was like the after party for the premiere, and I walked by and I was like, Jason, I love you, man. And it was just like, yeah, cool. And I was like fangirling so hard at that exact moment. It was really, really sad.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, whatever. Like, can you imagine being them and just people doing that all the time? You'd be like, I guess you would literally respond exactly as they do. Like, this is me.
Like Tobey Maguire, who hates it.
Please. Yeah, he's famous for hating it.
Oh, famously hates it. Hey, look, guys, if you have met a celebrity and you want to tell us your fun stories, or we've not said some news that you want to talk about this week, I know I've skipped over some Moon Knight news, but let us know. You can find us at Podcast Assemble on Instagram or thepodcastassemble@gmail.com. Final bit of news before we move on to our main topic. Did you hear this week, Dre, and everyone out there, that Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer movie has officially been confirmed to start principal photography on the 23rd of February? Now, this is going to be an absolutely huge movie, right? So it's got Emily Blunt, it's got Cillian Murphy, it's got Florence Pugh, it's got Matt Damon, it's got Rami Malek, it's got Robert Downey Jr., it's got Josh Hartnett.
Everyone that's ever been in a fucking Nolan movie. Did you just say Josh Hartnett?
Now, that's a really interesting tidbit, right? So Josh Hartnett was originally approached to be Batman in Christopher Nolan's trilogy, and he turned it down because he didn't want to be typecast as a superhero. And this is the one of the things in his career that he regrets to the hilt, because not only was it a case he would have been potentially one of the most influential superhero movies of all time, but also the chance to work with Chris Nolan, who, he's got his little list of collaborators. He likes to stick with a similar crew and regularly brings them back. So he missed out on all of that. So it's interesting that he's back in this one.
What happened to him? He was not. He's been out of any. He hasn't been in anything in ages.
He did a TV show not long ago, and it was fairly well received. I watched the first couple of episodes. I can't remember what it was. It was in Victorian England or something, and it had, and it had magic, and I think sort of fairies and that kind of thing as well. It was all right. I watched the first maybe half a series, and it was pretty good. But I haven't seen him in a lot, man. Well, anyway, do you want to premise our main topic this week?
Sure. Tommy, it is Interstellar. We are doing the what is it, the fifth?
We're back, with our fourth in our anthology of Chris Nolan. And I'm excited for this one, man. It's one we've talked about a number of times and never really gone into a lot of depth with. So I'm really interested to get into this. But before we do you want to give me your stupid plot summary of Chris Nolan's 2014 Interstellar?
This is all the prep I've done today, and it is good stuff, mate.
I'm excited. Hit me with it.
Yeah, well, I won't even preface it. Gary Chaplin's sixth love language is multi-dimensional space, time, and travel. If you know who Gary Chaplin is, he is the guy that wrote a very famous book about relationships, The 5 Languages of Love. Well, the 5th love language that he didn't figure out is multidimensional space-time travel.
So they found it out. This is it. Chris Nolan has filled in the gaps.
Yeah.
Wow.
When you have to explain your jokes, they're not that great, I guess. But
no, I always say that. They're the best kind of jokes. All right. Mine really quickly is an impossible black structure appears, providing a connection between the past and the future. Our astronauts are sent on a mysterious mission that results in a mind-bending trek through space and time. This is 2001: A Space Odyssey. No, wait, that's wrong. 1 second, one more. No, this is it. All right, I've got it now. In an ambitious story, our heroes realize they must work together or perish on a doomed planet. The population's future has one last chance to survive by jetsoning off-planet on an ark towards new, further planets to recolonize. This is the 3rd episode of Loki TV show Lamentis. No, that's not right either. God, I've lost this completely. Sorry, mate. We might just have to move on. Can you guess me the IMDb score for this?
7-8.
Ooh, it's not. It's 8.6 out of 10.
God, that's really high.
Which I'm really interested by because it is. But when you hear the Rotten Tomatoes and the Metacritic, I wonder how you'll react knowing how high that is. Like, tell me what you think the percentage Rotten Tomatoes score is.
77.
77. It's 72. Which I think is quite low for this. Like, I feel like he's got a lot of stands, like a lot of people who absolutely buzz off him, Chris Nolan. I would have thought that would have been hiked up a little bit. And it's not dissimilar to the Metacritic score, which I would ask you to guess, but I've kind of given it away already, is 74. So,
okay.
I don't know, man. They're kind of mixed, I would say. Would you say that?
Look, I think that this movie does feel like, if you're a Christopher Nolan fan, you give it that 8. What do you say? 8.6?
Yeah.
Like that even that's a bit aggressive. You'd give it like
That's
a low 8, right? If you're a Christopher Nolan fan who's also grounded in reality, you'd be like, this is too long, so that makes it like a 7.5. Right? Like it should have been shorter and it would have been like a real 8. But because it's so long, you're like, it's above average, it's a 7.5. And that's my take. It's not a bad movie, it's just too much.
I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah.
Look, we absolutely going to talk about that because I have some, I genuinely really like this movie, but I found myself towards the end being like, this is a lot of things and completely unnecessary things. But before we do that, this movie has a bunch of really cool acts, actually. People, I didn't even know were in this. So obviously Matthew McConaughey is in this. We've got Anne Hathaway. We of course have John Lithgow. I'm talking absolute nonsense. Bill Owen, a bunch. Michael Caine's obviously back for this. Casey Affleck. But I'd completely forgotten that Matt Damon, for a start, was in this. And there's Timothée Chalamet in this as well. I had no idea he was in this.
Yeah, he's like the little son, isn't he?
Yes.
I forgot that he's in it. Yeah.
So we'll talk about this in a moment. But there are multiple generations, or at least multiple versions of different characters in this through their ages. And Timothée Chalamet's great in this. He plays a moody teenager just the way a moody teenager would.
Yeah, and he always plays a moody teenager these days, doesn't he? Whether he's the king.
He really does.
Whether he's the fucking Prince Atreid or whatever, whether he's always a moody teenager. Little emo boy.
Atreides, yeah. I need to rewatch, I need to watch The King. It sounds great. Before we move on then, do you want to tell me who you think is the goofiest IMDb picture? I'm going to quickly send you a pic now, and we're going to add this to our Instagram like we did this week. Thank you everyone who voted on our Instagram for Martin Starr. Of course, he was the goofiest IMDb of last week and remains our current MVP.
Ah! Oh my God, this guy!
Can you explain the challenger to me this week? This is Mark Kazmir Dinovitz Jr., which is a great name to start with. I'm already into this. But do you not think he looks like he's just come out of like auditioning for a Guns N' Roses musical? And this picture's got like one of those crap Photoshop filters that's like oil painting or sketch me.
Yeah, it's like grainy it's grainy white. Yeah. Yeah, it's like
terrible.
What you see on like a crappy salon door.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's so bad. And I kind of love it though. Like it's kind of fantastic. We're going to post these so you guys can vote on our Instagram of which you think is the goofiest. But Dre, between Mark Kazmir Dinovitz Jr. and of course Martin Starr, our current MVP, which do you think is the goofiest of the IMDb?
I'm going to give it to Fabio. This Fabio guy.
Fabio,
who is that's what he looks like.
Dinovitz Jr. is our new MVP. We have a winner.
He's the dude.
Amazing.
Yeah. According to me, which really doesn't mean much.
I wondered if we could maybe tweak this section, because obviously it's very visual and it's fun to have the interaction on Instagram. But I wonder if we could change it moving forward. Tell them what you think. Or listeners, tell us what you think at Podcast Assemble on Instagram. Could we do it as what's the goofiest IMDb role for a movie? So I tell you a role that someone has.
Like a title.
Yes.
Yes. And then you have to guess who it is, having seen it. That'd be a very good little... Look at this. Look at us flow. Look at us
go. So, for example, Mark Casimir Dinovitz Jr., he plays uncredited NASA inspector, which I think is a double fantastic role.
He's a double whammy. He wins both.
He is great. Yeah, he is. Yeah. He wins both. It's awesome. So that maybe we'll look to integrate that a little bit moving forward. But let's talk about Interstellar then. Like, this obviously came out in 2014. It's Chris Nolan at his most mind-bending and most interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about the plot?
Yeah, so the plot. Well, we follow Matthew McConaughey plays an ex-astronaut who, there's not really space in the world for astronauts anymore.
It's the future, right? So it's sort of 50-ish years in the future.
Yep. The Earth is dying, and they don't have money to do that shit, right? They need farmers. They need people to like research how to make food because the Earth is dying. And so that's what they do. He lives out on a farm. He doesn't really like it, right?
No.
He's got 2 kids. And eventually we figure out that, the world is dying. They are fucked. It wasn't really clear before. They thought they were going to be fine, but there's actually a secret project that is meant to basically shoot humanity out into the Interstellar to hopefully repopulate, the other worlds in future generations, like clones of us or little like petri dishes of us. There's a side mission where they're hoping that maybe they might find a more livable world, but that is very unlikely. And our hero, Matthew McConaughey, who has been aching to stop being a farmer, decides he needs to go out on this basically suicide mission through a wormhole to find the next world that is livable to save both his family and humanity.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers.
Yeah, I was going to say, the 2 missions... Mission A, PG version, where they're trying to basically seed the universe with these little petri dishes of humans.
Oh, okay. Interesting phrasing.
Is the primary mission. But Mission B, where they basically try and use this wormhole to find a livable planet, is only usable if they can crack this code, this algorithm for how to come back.
Correct.
Which is basically a big math problem about time travel.
Which they're struggling with. I think this movie is summed up best by its tagline, which is, mankind was born on Earth, but it was never meant to die here. And I think that sort of like sums up a lot of where this movie stems from and how it sort of sets itself up. I think the world building to begin with in this is super fucking interesting. The way they build this, like you said, dystopian world. It's not quite. It's just. Do you know what I mean? Like I agree with you, but it's like it's on the cusp of being.
Well, in the beginning, you feel it's on the cusp, but you find out that actually they've basically done the math.
It's further along than they're fucked. But it's exactly what you're saying. It is like quite well trodden sci-fi ground. I think personally, the Earth is dying.
Yeah.
We need to find a new planet or recolonize, face extinction. Except this film has so much corn in it.
There's a lot of corn.
So much corn.
Which is not very different from the current state.
And I don't mean the band.
Yeah. We have a lot of corn in America.
Yeah, I know.
Look, you cut me off because I was meandering because it is a confusing story. But
it's a very confusing story.
In essence, disasters, famine, the way to fix it, interstellar travel, a newly discovered wormhole, which, do we just discover those every day? I guess so. Allows them to go into the far reaches of the solar system with a team of astronauts where no man has done before, and basically try and find a planet that might sustain human life, or worst case, throw the seeds out there. And we follow that.
Exactly. There's a lot of, not really, it's a lot of rambling, but it's kind of right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kind of interwoven stories happening at the same time. And some people know certain things and other people don't. And we've obviously followed Coop, who's Matthew McConaughey. And it's sort of like, the crux of this story is based on his decision, whether he essentially agrees to go on this mission to save mankind or stay with his kids, right? That's kind of the crux of it. So it's which is the bigger problem to him, which is really interesting. And I've talked before a little bit about pots of movies I have in my head, you know, so we've got ones that you see in the cinema, ones that I'm probably never going to watch, ones that I'm happy to wait to come on streaming, ones that I'll just watch on an aeroplane.
Yes.
This falls into a brand new pot of movies for me, and this is one I only thought of while I was watching this, which is I really, really, really like this movie. It's fantastic. It's interesting. It's big. It's bold. The cinematography is amazing. But it's not a movie I'm interested in watching again and again and again. Like I can watch it the one time, and I don't need to watch it again. You know,
I was down to watch it again, and then I got tired. It takes a long time to get to the point.
It's a long movie.
Like it takes a long time to get to like the action. You know, it's a long setup, this one. I remember they were like going through the wormhole, and it was like an hour and 15 minutes in, and I was like, literally nothing has happened yet.
We'll talk about we'll talk about pacing in a minute, I think. But I think that's one thing that maybe this movie and Chris Nolan in general perhaps gets a little carried away with. Like there are so many storylines in this, and there's so much happening. I feel like the last half an hour could have been cut completely. And when we get to spoilers, I've got some bits I'd love to talk to you about with that, because the ending it's bold and it's interesting, and it kind of changes the entire tone of the movie. Because this movie's fucking bleak, man. Like, you tell me what you think, but like the whole first hour and a half, like you say, set on Earth, it's so like desolate. Yep. I mentioned corn as a joke before. It really is like this is like the nightmare of that. Do you remember that Rick and Morty episode, Interdimensional Travel? And there's like a show where everyone in the TV show is corn. It's like the nightmare of that TV show, because all they eat is goddamn corn. And like I say, it just makes me sad, and I think that's part of the reason why I find this hard movie to go back to. Probably around the fact that that's kind of the way the world is probably going in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it's a little bit too close to home, isn't it? You know?
It is a little bit.
Like I agree. I'm a big fan of the movie. I just, you know, it's depend. You have to be in the right state of mind and mood, and you have to have some time on your hands.
Exactly. And you mentioned before, it does follow the story of Coops family as well, and it's interesting because not only does it focus on Matthew McConaughey going to space, the interesting part about him going to space is that it very simply builds a story around he is sort of out of time with the rest of us. So it follows different timelines almost. Yep. So once he goes into space, time works very differently for him. He spends months in a cryo sleep kind of thing, and then when they get through the wormhole and near the black hole, time works differently, which we'll talk about. So it does flip at one point. So around the 2/3 of the way through the movie, you flip back to see the story of what was happening on Earth while they were in space. And you kind of track the progression. And it's really interesting how they've done it, because Coop's moving on a linear time path that's exponentially quicker, that's slower, than everyone else's. So everyone else is getting older and older and older. So we mentioned different characters playing different people. So you've got Timothée Chalamet playing his son, who is Tom. But then later on, you've got Casey Affleck playing Tom as an older, grown-up person with kids of his own. And it's the case of that their life and time is on completely different courses. And it really explains that pretty well through the movie. And it's fucking, I think,
tragic as well, without getting too into spoilers, because it's like, you know, 5 minutes pass at one point, and anyway, we'll get into it later.
No, absolutely, and I'm super keen to talk about that. I think one of the themes I've put of this movie, or maybe tone, is I think this is a tragedy. Like, and I mentioned before, like the ending,
not for the ending,
it kind of tries to take it in a different direction, which I can't wait to talk about in spoilers. But this is a fucking tragedy. I think it should have stayed that way.
If not for the ending. That is my biggest complaint with the movie, to be honest.
Same.
Beyond it being meandering and long, the ending was not up to my standards, which are very high, Tommy. Yeah. Very, very high standards.
Yeah, I mean, for a man who doesn't watch movies, you're...
Yeah. I was going to say, you touched on themes, though. What real quick, let's do that. You down? Because there's a bunch.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about themes. I've said this is a tragedy, but do you want to expand on that? Give me a little bit more.
Well, I just think that the best parts of the themes are like this cycle of denial.
Sure. Yeah.
I just feel like it's about humanity and how they, like, before they think about the fact that, like, oh, well, we can just keep trying to grow more crops. And it's like, no, you know, it's not going to work. Why are you doing it? So there's that element.
Yeah. 100%.
There's the, you know, we're not spoiling this.
There's a really interesting juxtaposition in that. Sorry, in that exact point, there's a really interesting juxtaposition between his two kids. So there's Tom, who we just mentioned, who ends up being Casey Affleck, and there's his other kid, who is Murph, who starts off as Mackenzie Foy, who I feel like I should know who that is, but I really, really can't remember who it is.
She's famous.
But it ends up being Jessica Chastain.
She's in a bunch of stuff.
And that, exactly what you've just describing, is almost built into their two characters. So Jessica Chastain wants to follow her dad and, find a way to get off Earth and find a new life for humanity, whereas Tom is so ingrained in farming and Earth. He is all about, he's got his head so stuck in the ground that he can't see past the dirt that is covering this whole
he's like Earth. He's devoted his whole life to it. He's in a denial now that he can't comprehend changing the fact that he just wasted his life whole farming for no reason.
And that's a tough mindset to get out of.
Right. And she can't comprehend the fact that there's a chance that her dad actually didn't do this because he couldn't help himself, but because he actually did think he was the best for the job and to save her. Right? There is an element of him that was excited to do this, but was it overweighted by the fact that it actually needed to be done? I guess they put that debate out there, and she can't get over that. There's also, without spoiling it, Matt Damon's whole little cameo. That's cycle of denial. No,
I think we should probably try and save him for spoilers.
Yeah, it's completely distilled there. So I thought that was a big.
It's a really interesting. That's a really interesting part, and we can talk about that for sure. I think we've not done a fantastic job really of describing how you get to the different points of the movie, but it's a hard movie to really distill, and I think that's part of the point of it.
The main point that we actually probably haven't described well is the fact that while Matthew McConaughey Cooper is traversing solar systems to go find the new home, and time is moving much slower for him and faster for Murph, his daughter, him leaving has made her so obsessed at finding a way to get him back home that she's become the mathematician, and she's studying under the mathematician that convinced Matthew McConaughey to leave to help him find the answer to the algorithm that will allow him to basically come back home via some weird space.
And it's weird because it's a really good performance, because it's almost like a passive aggressive need for him to come back. It's like she's so angry with him. She almost wants him to come back so she can tell him how angry she is with him.
Yeah.
It's like it's incredible. It's really interesting. I think that sort of leans on the performances. We've mentioned Chastain a couple of times. She's really good in this, and she's not actually got that big a part, I don't feel, considering the length of the movie. I feel like she could have been even more fleshed out.
You reckon? I thought she was pretty pivotal to it.
Yeah, she is, but
I don't know how she is via screen time, but she rings out to me as a pretty important.
Yeah, that character only comes about sort of 2/3 of the way into the movie when she's grown up.
Yeah,
there's obviously young Murph all the way through, and then out of nowhere she's grown up. But it's also interesting mentioning performances, because this for me, he's obviously done a lot, but this was the first time I think I really, really realized that McConaughey was past his rom-com stage.
Really?
He is a serious actor, and I can't remember if this came before or after Wolf of Wall Street, but it was between the two of them where I was like, oh, this guy's a serious.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that was for me was True Detective. I remember seeing that season, and I was just like, damn, that was good.
Oh yeah, that's fair actually. That was a fantastic season. Yeah, we're sort of dovetailing between points. I did have one question for you actually while we're talking about performances. What did you think of Anne Hathaway's hair?
I don't want to make fun of that. I'm not a fan of short. She had short hair, right? In this.
Yeah, it was a big deal at the time.
I'm not a big fan of short hair in general.
No, I think it's funny because it was apparently a big controversy at the time, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, what's?" And I was just like, I didn't even notice. I was watching it and I was like, "Oh yeah, she's got a haircut. Who cares?" But genuinely, one thing I did find interesting on a more serious note was the robots. The TARS robots.
Yeah,
they
those
have
are
those
cool.
big Tetris kind of Jenga blocks. They were so interesting, and I think I didn't give them enough credit the first time I watched this movie.
How interesting the design was.
Not even that. We'll talk about the sort of design of them in a quick sec, but the fact that they are genuine personalities. There are certain parts about them. For example, they have a humor setting, which I find equally hilarious and equally terrifying. The fact that they're ex-military, right? I think that's what they are, and they were used in the military previously. These big blocks that they bring on the spaceship, and they can help out, or they can help do calculations and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a bit about it which is they have an honesty setting. Now that terrified me. Like, if you imagine a computer which is supposed to just be completely non-binary, completely binary, yes or no, having an honesty setting, you're like, oh, how do I look today? You look great. Is that the 10% telling me that, or is that the 90% that's honest? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it totally plays off Alien, right? That Alien was like the first thing
Big
I
time.
saw that like really
Big
did
time.
that super well.
That was actually in contention for being one of my stupid plot summary, jests. Because I mean, like I said, it is well trodden sci-fi ground, just with Chris Nolan's interesting lens on it. But like we mentioned, the sort of pacing of this, and like it's kind of slow, and I personally found it to be too slow. What did you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I think they just took a little long getting to where they wanted to go.
Yeah, and I think it crosses a line between Nolan being deliberate, in his choices and his styling and his storytelling, and just being slow. And we're going to talk about it as I mentioned, but like I think maybe it's 30 minutes too long.
Yeah,
is it too long?
Like, and honestly, I don't even mind that it was like slow in the beginning because it was really beautiful.
Yeah, and the cinematography, man, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. Well, I guess we can transition to that, but like when it started to take a turn towards the end, like, and they were attacking on things towards the ending, like added strife, I was like, this needs to go. Like, because it's not even beautiful now. It's like you're taking this ending a place I don't want it to go anyway. Like, that's where I would have cut. I think at least.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about that because I've got a few points that I think we might agree on. I don't like agreeing with you, Dre. I want you to be. I want you to say opposite things. Yeah. But I think there's a really interesting contradiction in this between how it's shot, the cinematography. For example, on Earth, like I mentioned, it's grey, it's bleak, it's boring. But as soon as they get into space, it's clean, it's crisp. Everything becomes that little bit brighter because there's nothing graying up the set. There's no Zack Snyder Instagram filters on the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love that. And that's clearly a Chris Nolan decision to be like, this is how we differentiate the stories. There's this story on Earth. It's this bleak. It's this desolate land. And then the space, which is the hope and the final frontier, and how do we, expand the human race past where it's not supposed to die?
Totally. On board, man. I agree. I think, what else have we not talked about? You talked about the cinematography. We've talked about the pacing. It's a bit meandering. We've talked about the castings a bit, which I thought were overall really good. The acting was pretty damn good. And Anne Hathaway fell flat for me a few times, but I think that was more the concept behind it than anything. Yeah. Like, behind the writing for her. This is one of the ones that Christopher Nolan had, like, I guess, in the plot and the character side, since we're talking about that. The characters had motivations.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Yeah.
This is like one of the more character-y films that he's made. They gave like legitimate motivations tied to like what's happened to the characters, what's happening around them, and like those were believable for both the son, the daughter, Cooper, and Anne Hathaway, because when they
absolutely agreed.
So
we talk a lot when we do these episodes, especially when we're looking at Chris Nolan and our anthologies, that many of his movies he doesn't nail that. He doesn't quite get it right in terms of the character development and their motivations. Whereas it's so interesting, the torn nature of Coop and how like he wants to stay with his kids, but he knows that for them to have any sort of future, he has to leave them. I find that's a big theme for me in this whole movie. It's what's for the greater good.
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture. Do you want to stay? Do you want to go? I love that.
Yeah, totally. I think it's like a really cool question to explore as well, because you're like, he is probably even you can tell that he's in an internal debate with himself of like, am I just doing this because I like this is what gets me high, right? Like this is what I want to do. I want to explore. Or am I doing this because I think I have a legitimate chance? Like, am I doing this knowing that I'm going to die because it's still exciting to me because no one's ever fucking done it before? Or am I doing this because, like, I want to actually help my kids?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a bunch of... I think we're going to deep dive in that in a minute. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention before we do. I think this movie's really helped in terms of building those character developments, personally, by some of the musical choices. And it's interesting saying that because...
Good old Hans Zimmer.
Hans is back, man, and he's so good. But you can tell that Chris has had a word with him, and Chris, I'm saying it as if he's my best mate. Chris had a word with him and been like, let's sci-fi the shit out of this. Like, let's like, we've done Inception, we've got that wah noise. We don't want that. That's not what this is about. But I think in terms of the character moments and the times when it really hits home, the decisions Coops made, the music choices are really, really interesting in my opinion, because there's a lot of time when you're in space, and I've used the word terrifying, and it kind of is, when there is just no sound.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you'll notice when Coop's having the calls from home or the videos from home, and he's seeing them growing up, that his kids growing up, and he's lamenting his decisions at times, and there's just no sound, there's no music in the background, there's no score, and you just sort of left with this the weight of, you know, the decision. And that's a really bold choice. No, it is. It was well done. Like, that part was really well done. I don't think that anything was really poorly done in this movie. It was just like certain decisions were made that you really want to talk about that. Let me say one more thing then before we move on.
Of course.
I need to somehow build into this that there was a physicist who worked with Chris Nolan on this, a dude called Kip Thorne, and one of the things he said was, we will do anything for the story as long as it works we can make the science work. So a lot of this is based on scientific
theoretical
theory,
science,
a lot of his own theoretical science, might I add, and especially things like we haven't really talked about the black hole yet. We haven't really had a chance to. But the black hole, the really interesting thing is they didn't really know what one of them looked like at the time. And they sort of built this model of what a black hole could look like. And since we've had images of black holes, and it's scarily similar to what they sort of created in this.
Have we actually?
It's genuinely really interesting. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So like they have an image of a black hole now, and it kind of just looks like, almost like the ring of Sauron. It's really fucking scary. It's just like, it's just light essentially disappearing around this ring. It's really cool. But a lot of his theories were used in this, and he essentially kept Nolan in check a lot of the time. One of the things Nolan wanted to use was faster than light travel. And he was like, absolutely. Kip Thorne was like, absolutely not. That's not something that can be done. It won't ever be done. We're not going to use that, which I thought was cool. You know, it kind of worked and it made sense. One thing they did use in this was a lot of practical stuff. You know, it's classic Nolan to be using practical effects, and a lot of the spaceships are practical and all that sort of thing. And it makes sense to have, if you've got real things, don't have them doing unrealistic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Totally.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I think that I didn't know that, but that's actually exciting. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right?
If I knew that before watching the movie, that you might get more out of it, I think. Knowing that, like, most of this stuff is theoretically possible. Now, obviously, certain things like wouldn't happen, like the ending. So right, yeah. But the all the stuff leading up to it, that is pretty cool. And I'm looking at this image of a black hole. It's like fucking trippy. It's wild. Anyway.
It is trippy, right? All right, well, tell me then, before we quickly move on, what are your 3 best and 3 worst for this movie? I'm intrigued to spoil this, by the way. I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I guess my 3 worst I'll start with. How about that? Get the worst out of the way.
Yeah, go for it.
Why is everyone always like so close and related in these movies? Like, the one spaceship guy that can do this happens to be the father of the best mathematician in the world, who like goes and studies under his mate that he used to work with. Like, just like a little too connected. And I do appreciate. I suppose
she became the best.
I mean, dude, who like, okay, so becomes the best mathematician in the world, which isn't easy to do by the way. Yeah, magician.
Is this the Prestige again?
Mathematician, which isn't easy to do, by the way. So it's kind of like, give me a break, you know? Like, add some diversity in this. It doesn't have to be the white guy and the white girl who's the mathematician, who were like, she still could have been involved in the story with that not being her, I guess, her role.
Destiny. I feel like that was a big problem with a lot of Nolan's movies. He's obviously tried to change that opinion with, you know, Tenet having the main character as Denzel Washington's son. I'm looking at this Oppenheimer cast: Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, Rami Malek, Downey Jr., Josh Hartnett. That's a lot of white people.
Like, and it's not even just that. Like, if there was more diversity, it'd be great. It's also the fact that, like, I just don't think it's believable that like that would happen, and it'd be like really cool to have like the really, really smart person actually be separate, given the themes that love ties everything together, and have that happen.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, for two people that are very independent of each other.
All right, give me your other worsts.
Anyway, the ending, which we can't talk about, but it's
we'll talk about it in a second.
At a high level, it's not my favorite. My other worst is just again the pacing, which we've kind of already talked about. So I'm being a bit redundant.
I mean, I kind of agree with a lot of them. I think much like last week, in fact, almost exactly the same as last week. My third best and third worst tie together, so I'll save them. I've just said for my worst that I find the movie a bit frustrating at times.
Yeah.
I find that it literally, like I said at the beginning, it's bleak. It doesn't offer you any hope. It's a bit like the Batman thing, right? So the hope is what keeps you going, but inevitably it's nothing. Like hope isn't going to help you in the end. Where the ending's kind of optimistic, like you mentioned, and it just doesn't fit the movie or the tone of the movie. And we'll get into that in a moment. And that frustrated me a lot. Like I almost feel like it could have been like the Leo DiCaprio movie we talked about from a week or so ago, Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
It could have been the same. Like it could have just been bleak, and I'd have been down with that, but it's not. Anyway, I found it sort of interesting and kind of scary how much like the situation this is the situation we are driving towards, right? This is almost it's not even a mirror image of our world. It's just what's going to happen in sort of 50 years time, and scares the absolute piss out of me. I'm not going to lie to you. So that's in worst because I don't like to be that confronted by my movies. I'm kidding, of course.
I mean, it's fair. Like it should scare you, right?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. My last one is just the ambiguity of it. Like there's times in it where I just was frustrated by some. We talked about the science of it. The science kind of grounds it in theoretical reality, but I wanted it to be more. I on one hand wanted it to be more ambiguous, and we'll talk about that with the ending in a minute. And on one hand was like, some of the stuff it goes into is just nonsensical. We'll talk about that in a minute. And in fact, that is my first best as well, funnily enough. Like I liked some of the ambiguities in
like
it.
What parts in particular can you talk about them? I'm curious.
I can't. We'll talk about it when we get into spoilers. I'm going to leave it at that. I'll quickly run through my other bests. I liked the ambition. I said almost arrogance of the lofty ideas of it. Like, it is a very deep movie, and I really did enjoy that about it. And the practical effects, I touched on them at the end.
Yeah, they're
insane. They're so Nolan as well. So Nolan.
They are. And they're just I wonder how he even filmed some of this. Like, these space shots,
miniatures,
with the ships,
all miniatures. You have like these tiny recreations of like a tenth of the size, or whatever, and it's a lot of the stuff they do as well. I won't go too hard into it, but a lot of the stuff they do is front projection. So, for example, when Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway are in the spaceship, they genuinely have like a projection of space in front of them. So they're not just staring at a green screen. They are reacting to stuff that's happening.
That's cool.
That looks like space.
Yeah.
And I find that really, it's interesting that it's giving them something to act against. Whereas you look at something like the Lord of the Hobbit.
They just had to pretend.
And it's just nonsense. It's like, what's his name? Emporium McKellen broke down crying on the set, being like, "This isn't what I do acting for."
That was on The Hobbit, right?
To act with. Yeah.
What happened there? Do you sorry to get off topic, but you've mentioned that many times. Like you obviously, I'm curious.
Green screen.
He was just over it.
He was just like, he was acting to a green wall, and he was like, "Why am I doing this? This isn't what I'm into."
Yeah.
Because he's all about the theater and stuff as well. So anyway, give me your three best super quickly before we move on.
Yeah, my three best were the visuals, as you said, and cinematography. The 20 years via a video sequence. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's
and cool. Like that whole scene was like one of the best scenes I think in any of his movies he's done. And Matt Damon.
Well, we'll talk about Matt Damon in just a sec, because that's a really interesting part of the movie, and it really adds to the tones and themes. So, is this then, before we move on, better or worse than Aquaman 2018?
It is definitely better. No doubt about it, better.
Okay.
You don't agree?
I'm gonna disagree with you on that front.
Wow.
I just wanted to disagree with you to be perfect. Like, no, I believe this is probably one of my all-time sort of favorite movies in a sense. It really is. I love it. The constant sense of dread, the knowledge that this is probably going to be our fate in the real world. But I have to say, I find it worse than Aquaman 2018. I don't want that weight in my entertainment. I don't want to be reminded that we're all going to die.
You came to the wrong place, didn't you?
In 50 years.
But are we, though? Tommy, the ending.
It's just... Aquaman is big fun, and it's stupid, and there are times when you just don't need to be reminded that we're all going to die.
Fair enough.
And I don't want that right now.
Understand that.
I'm going to absolutely go back on that in future episodes, but for the moment, I'm going to say that. Let's talk about this ending then. We've been skipping around it. Spoilers from here on out for Interstellar 2014 that I'm sure everyone's seen by now, but let's talk about this big ending.
Yes.
So the sort of ending then is this sort of split ending, right? So you've got McConaughey in space, still the same age, trying to find a planet to essentially humans can repopulate and restart over on again.
Yes.
And you've got his daughter Murph, who's aged rapidly, back on Earth, who is trying to solve an equation which will allow humans to leave Earth. Gravity is the problem. We can't get off Earth because
gravity's a constant, which is kind of funny.
It's too strong. Well, exactly, that's the point.
Yeah.
But they need data from a black hole to do this. And what they find is, on their travels, once they've gone through the wormhole, they're looking at these other planets to find out if any of them are viable to live on. There is a black hole which is near one of them. And what essentially happens is Matthew McConaughey's Coop realizes they don't have enough power on the ship or energy on the ship to go to the final planet, one of three, to see if it's viable for human life. And he jettisons Anne Hathaway off towards this planet while allowing himself to be sucked into the black hole. And essentially, he thinks die, right? He thinks he's just going to get crushed to death. You've
done very well. Look at this.
What happens in the black hole is he finds that he is magically transported to this fifth dimension.
In between dimensions, yeah.
Who knows how he got there? Who knows? And in this dimension, time becomes a physical thing that he can see all of at once, right? So he's seeing this big, I call it a library. That's the only way I can really describe it. This big library of time where he can see all of Coop's, all of Murph's life, all of his life, all of everything happening. And he realizes that through gravity, the thing that they can't get over on Earth, through gravity, he can send her messages via various things, dust and a watch and stuff, that she can then use to figure out this equation from the data he's got from being sucked into this black hole. Now, there are so many problems with this, and I just want to know what your thoughts about this are, like, in the first place, because that's sort of a vague overview of it. And I've watched a bunch of videos about how this is about fifth dimension, and it's about the human race of become a higher race, and no longer are bound by four dimensions. They can now have the fifth dimension, however many they want, whatever it is. And I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about it.
So I don't mind the concept of it. Like, I thought that, like, the concept of this library, because it was like someone was trying to help them, right? Someone was trying to, it's implied.
Someone from the future.
It is implied. But like,
they say they or them are trying to help us, because these them or they create, like, the wormhole.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like an exterior force, whether it's an alien, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a kind of a get out of jail free card for all our bullshit.
Big time.
And so it's kind of like,
Big
I would
time.
have liked it to be more like, I would have liked them to make a stronger choice and make it a tragedy. Like, where he's able to basically,
this is what I was saying.
He's able to basically maybe reach his daughter and have that moment. But, that life on Earth isn't great after, right? Like, or like that might be too nihilistic, but like, for it all to end the way it does, which is like, he survives, she survives, everybody survives. They're on a space station. He gets sucked into the black hole and then somehow just
big time
teleports to the future space station. Like, it's just a bit too many stretches for me,
I got a question for you about that I'm going to ask you in a minute. But my first point around this is, right, this becomes a paradox when you think about it. So first and foremost, for humanity to have reached this stage in the future where they've found a new dimension and they can see time or whatever it is, and affect it all at once, which is kind of, I think, the plot to Arrival, if I'm not wrong. We watched that one together. That was a good movie. So for them to have reached this stage and to send someone back to help Coop out, how did they get off the planet in the first place to get to this stage? So without the information Coop sends back, they don't get off the planet, right? But he can't have been sent back. He can't have ended up in this fifth dimension without someone getting to this higher plane of existence first. So you end up in a loophole whereby he can't be sent that.
Yeah,
it's a paradox.
But all time travel
that's what frustrates me.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah,
that's what frustrates me, and it's the Dumbledore thing, right? Like who cast the Patronus first? It doesn't make sense. Like someone has to have done it in the first place.
Yes,
and if they can get to that stage without sending him back,
there's an answer for that. It's just not human.
A wizard did it.
It's not humans. It's some interdimensional force. Like it's like
it's kind of implied that it is humans, which I find frustrating.
Do you think that it is? Do you think that that's what he's confirmed?
That's kind of what they say in the movie. I think they imply that it's humanity having transcended to this higher plane, which
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but
which is sort of fine. So you said before, like you thought this whole bit could have been cut. I'm agreeing with you, right? This is the bit for me that doesn't help the movie. It gives it that optimism at the end. Everyone's alive. Everyone gets away. I would have loved it. Loved it if Coop had have been sucked into this black hole. And fine, we can see Murph finding out how to solve the problem. We can see her going back to her old room and, you know, finding all the notes from whatever, from what is essentially him in the library. But don't show me that. Leave that ambiguous. That's what I want. I want that ambiguity in the middle. Like, how was it Coop going to the black hole and finding a higher dimension? Was it aliens? Who knows? They found a way off Earth, but we don't know Coop's fate, and that would have made this a lot more interesting to me.
And he doesn't live. It would have made it more bittersweet.
You don't know. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's more like what Nolan typically does.
Yeah,
I didn't mind like the library thing because like it's a little bit on the nose, but it's more like the outcome of it and like. But I take your point. I think that would be cool. There'd be easier, more subtle ways to imply that it was him throughout the movie that Christopher Nolan generally has done with other movies like that. So I agree. That could be pretty cool.
Completely agree. I also did have a question, and I sort of mentioned it before, and I wondered this, like, because of the tonal shift at the very end and how it almost takes a U-turn for me. It's like, what is happening? This is a different movie almost. Like, he gets everything he wants. That's not how a Christopher Nolan movie works. Do you maybe think that ending, so from the point he goes into the black hole, could that be like a metaphor for the afterlife? Could it be like, you know, maybe this is all happening in his mind? Because there is a fantastic scene when he's talking to Matt Damon, which we'll talk about in just a sec. He's talking to Matt Damon, and Matt Damon's like, when you're about to die and it's your final moments, your brain shows you the things that you're fighting for most, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. And for Coop, it would obviously be his kids and his kids getting away and having this bright future.
Yeah.
You know, could it be just a metaphor?
I mean,
for him dying?
How cool would that have been if they kept it vague enough that we, you know, and that conversation was pointed as like one of the things that like made it vague. Like, I think that would have been a really, really cool way to do it. I agree. You've convinced me.
I would have loved it if they'd have just either changed the perspective, or maybe change the focus, change just the sheen on the screen.
Yeah.
Just made it
something subtle
enough.
Yeah.
That you could have been a bit like the ending of Inception, which I know we're going to talk about next time we do one of these.
Yeah.
A bit like that ending.
You don't even need to like do that much of a change. Just highlighting the conversation and then having what he said be what happens with like one little subtle other thing would be enough. That
might have been slamming in your face.
It would be enough for Nolan people to figure it out.
The Matt Damon conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I definitely feel like that. My personal opinion, like I'd love to know yours. My personal opinion is that's a better ending to this.
Way better. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. The ending,
and it could be that, but there are no indicators in the movie that that's what it is.
It ends too on the nose. It ends way too on the nose. Yeah.
Other than that one conversation with Matt Damon where he essentially calls out, you know, this is what could happen to you in your final moments. This is what the science indicates happens to you in your final moments. Like, you'll see the bright future. You'll see everything being rosy and glossy and great. But the ending doesn't support that, unfortunately. But I'd love to know what you think about this ending, because like I've jibbed on about it a lot. It's a lot though, right?
Look, I toy with like I thought the like part where he's like helping her discover things and the time is like a catalog is cool. I didn't hate it. I like
the effects.
Yeah, I did hate like the fact that we see him leave and meet the old her, and like I just didn't need that.
That's not good, is it?
I didn't need that. And she didn't need it either. She found a way to overcome, like that kind of devalues her whole arc, right? That was her whole struggle. It was too rosy. It was like it would have been better for it to be realistic. Like you're never gonna know what did it. Your motivation to find your dad and tell him, or your dad leaving in the first, like, you know what I mean? It was like this chicken egg thing. Like was it destiny, or was it you and your own, like, you know, how you basically operationalized your anger, right? Like
people call her ending out as it's actually quite a good moment for her, because she sends him away. She's like, look, I've lived my life and it's been without you. You're not part of it. It's great I can say goodbye, but like, you go and find your own sort of destiny now. But I'm with you, man. I didn't need to see that. Like, give me an ambiguous ending. Let me think it's all in his mind, whatever it might be. So, I agree, man. I'm on board with that. I did have one other question as well, which is, why does Chris Nolan hate happiness so much? Like,
he does it in this one.
75% of this movie, the last 10 minutes, sure, but the 75, 80, 90% of the movie where it's about the life we're about to be living in 50 years' time. Fuck, man, that's depressing.
Yeah, well, someone needs to call it out, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well,
no one's done anything about it, have they?
I think that I just think he likes really, like, I think like depressing things are usually, you know, they hit harder, right?
Yeah, they do.
Happy, jolly, like feel good stories hit really hard too, but they usually are happy, jolly, feel good because there's a depressing element to them. Now this is a little bit more depressing.
I completely agree.
Than most,
and it makes sense. It's about the human condition, right? We didn't really talk about the sort of space exploration journey. So, McConaughey, Hathaway, and others go through a wormhole, which, by the way, uses the exact same. You know, the bit where he folds the paper and he pushes the pencil through?
Yeah.
I think that's in about 6 different movies. I'm pretty sure that's in Event Horizon, among lots of others.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty...
So they go to a bunch of different planets. We're going to talk... I'm bringing you around to Matt Damon, I promise. There are 3 planets they go through after this wormhole that are potential for human life. The first one they go to, the second one they don't have enough energy to get to, and the third one is Matt Damon's planet. The first one is just this planet which is completely water, right? Completely water with these gigantic waves that every hour or so wipe you out. I just have one sort of query about this part, which is, why do they even land on it? What's the point? You get there, you see it's all water. You're not going to make like a fucking, I don't know, Sydney Harbour boat party style float for everyone to live on. That's just not going to happen. So why just turn around and fuck off?
Because there was meant to be a scientist that had a bunch of readings that was working there. They were going to pick
who they immediately found was dead.
Yeah, well, at that point, they wanted the readings to understand. There was other shit that they could use from it, I think. They didn't know they were dead until they landed, right?
Got it. So it was more to get the data.
It was to get the data and also pick her up. Like, they were there, so it's like, you know, if it was them, they would have liked to be picked up. Yeah. And it was kind of, rather than just be on this planet dead. But also, like, just because there's water doesn't mean you couldn't live on it, right? Like that's not the end of the world. Water's a good thing.
Look, man, we're not all Aquaman. We can't all do that. This is the most interesting planet for me, though, because this is the one where an hour on our time is, because it's next to the black hole, is an hour on this planet's time is 7 years in Earth years.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying. Just that idea.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like, how does that, like, oh man, like that whole thought of everyone aging around you and you just staying the same is just, that's one of my tones and themes of this movie, and that just freaks me out entirely.
No, I mean, it's a really, really freaky concept. It was, like, I remember that scene. So after that mission fucks up and they're down there for way longer than they meant to be. And they figure it out when they get back up. They figure out, like, fuck, we have really fucked it. And he's like, how much time has gone down on Earth? and they tell him, and it's been like, I don't know, like 14 years or some 20 years.
I can't remember. I think it's
she's like she's like a woman,
years.
and his son has kids, and they're like.
Well, you know, because when they get back to the space station, the astronaut though with the black dude, he's aged like 20 years or something.
Has
he?
Like I didn't even realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah, he's because like he's gone gray, and he's like and then that's when they realize they don't have the power to propel themselves towards the two other planets.
Yeah.
So they then have to choose between Anne Hathaway. I think Anne Hathaway is in love with Matt Damon.
She's in love with one of the other. Isn't it the other guy? She's in love with the other guy.
I can't actually remember.
And
oh, that's right.
Yeah, and they're debating which one to do. And the other guy's like readings are a bit worse than Matt Damon's, which are actually fraudulent. And she's saying,
we only find out when we get there.
You don't find that out till later, but they're fraudulent readings because he didn't want to die alone. He wanted to be picked up. So he's like, fuck, this planet actually sucks. If I give the data, they're never going to come. I'm going to die here. And
now that's a super interesting part of the movie. That whole loneliness.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's just like so cool and so interestingly done as well. His performance is fantastic
for sure. And it was so surprising when I saw the movie. I was like, what the fuck, Matt Damon?
Same. Yeah. Oh my god. And it's like there's a great bit when so what happens is they arrive and they realize that the planet's uninhabitable, and Matt Damon's just trying to get off, and Matt Damon's fighting with Matthew McConaughey because he wants to get off this planet and find a way home.
Yeah.
And he's headbutting him and cracking Matthew McConaughey's visor to try and essentially kill him.
Yeah.
And McConaughey's like, you've got a 50-50 chance that you're going to die here. And Matt Damon's like, that's a better chance.
Best odds I've had in years.
It's amazing. It's such a good line. I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And then obviously he messes up the spaceship. He tries to dock with it, and it doesn't fix, and he blows out the ship. That's where the action. There isn't much action in this movie, but that's where it really like hits home.
The wave scene as well,
the vastness of space,
where they're like catching the wave with the spaceship. I was like, wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it's so good, right? That whole scene is they're basically surfing it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like that Matt Damon character for me is the sort of he is the flip of McConaughey. He's lost everything. He doesn't feel there's any hope for the universe anymore. You know, McConaughey's feels like there's still hope, and you know maybe we'll be able to find a planet. Whereas he's just like, get me the fuck out of here. I just don't want to die alone.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if you were him, what would you do?
Yeah, what would you do?
It's a fair question to ask. Anyway,
there's two last bits then before we move on to a little bit of correspondence, and maybe we could rank the movies we've talked about so far. We've done Memento, we've done Prestige, we've done Tenet, and we've talked about this. And I'm interested to know how you, in terms of the Nolan anthology we're doing, the Antholan?
The Antholan.
Nolthology. None of those work.
Anthology.
Yeah. Which of those four movies is your favorite so far?
So we've seen, you said Interstellar, we've seen Prestige, we've seen Memento
and Tenet.
Well, Tenet's the worst.
I agree. Of these. I can't remember how we did it last time, so this is going to be completely fresh.
I think my favorite so far is actually The Prestige.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And then I would say Memento and then Interstellar.
That's okay. All right. I agree with you. I think Tenet's probably my least favorite of the four.
Yeah.
I'm struggling because I said I think Aquaman's better than this, but I would probably say this is my second favorite after Memento. It's not that I don't like Prestige, it's that I think I'd rather watch this than Prestige.
I love the acting in Prestige. Now, I've seen it so many times now that I wouldn't want to watch it again, but I just love those two actors. They just bounce off each other well.
I think Memento's been my favorite so far just because it was so different and it was so interesting, and the themes and the cinematography style and how one story was going one way and one story was going the other, and how the first 20 minutes were in Italian. I just felt like that movie was probably my favorite of these thus far. So it's all right. Maybe it's Memento, Prestige, this, and then Tenet. All right. So now we know the definitive ranking of Nolan movies we've talked about. All right. Let's do a little bit of true or false trivia.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm down. You down? Let's do this. All right. We'll be quick because this is a long episode. I've realized.
I don't know if I was feeling it or I was just tired. I was like, fuck. I'm feeling a bit exhausted. Anyway, carry on.
It's your favorite Metro episodes. You should have been so into this. All right. Final bits of true or false trivia. True or false? A According to Dr. Kip Thorne, I mentioned before, the physicist who worked on this, the largest degree of creative license in the movie were the clouds on the ice planet, which are structures that probably go beyond material strength, which ice would be able to support.
True.
So the ice planet is Matt Damon's planet.
True.
It is true. I find it really interesting. They're in the movie, they sort of effectively are like this looming threat that could attack at any moment. And I find it really interesting that that's the thing that they took the most like creative license with.
Well, because it was like acid rain or something. Yeah.
I can't 100%. It was the ice clouds, but yeah, that I find it super interesting. So that's 1 for 1. You're doing well here this week, Drazif. Next one. George Lucas was originally attached to direct this movie in 2006 and hired Jonathan Nolan to write the screenplay, but chose another project instead. In 2012, with Lucas's departure, Jonathan Nolan took it to his brother Chris, who did a treatment of the screenplay and made his own movie. True or false?
False.
You're right. It was actually Steven Spielberg. Spielberg had the rights to this apparently for ages.
George Lucas just seems like this is too heady for him.
Space. He likes a space opera. He's all...
Yeah, that's about all it's got in common.
Yeah, that's actually fair. All right. Last one then. The apocalyptic Earth setting in this movie is actually inspired by a Dust Bowl disaster that took place in the central areas of the United States and Canada during the Great Depression in the 1930s.
True, for sure. Well, I know that all that stuff did happen, but that just sounds true. Yes.
It is true, right? That's super interesting. I had no idea about all this stuff. I was having a little read about it before. And do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I learned about it in school.
Did you?
It's part of like what caused the Great Depression to be way worse because there was like no crops, so the prices were expensive.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. All right.
History.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for sticking with it. We do appreciate it. That was our, I want to say, rambling overview of Interstellar this week. We were a little rambling.
Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't my sharpest today. Hopefully, this death month of January is over. See the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
DL's back next week with aplomb. All right.
Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of correspondence. Where can they find us if they want to get in contact?
The podcastassemble@gmail.com or podcastassemble on Instagram.
Yes,
correct?
They can. Last week I asked for any memes, and we had a couple of fantastic ones. Thank you, everyone who sent us memes. One I picked that I thought you would like. It's This is by, oh God, I've cut out the name of the friend of the show. Apologies. I don't have who this is. I'll work it out for next week. However, the meme they sent is essentially you have to pick 2 movie franchises and you have to mash them together. And you've got 8 to choose from. So your choices are the Harry Potter Wizarding World, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, James Bond, Mission Impossible, Lord of the Rings, Fast and the Furious, or the Monsterverse, so Godzilla versus Kong.
You have to mash them up?
You have to choose 2 of those to mash them up and make them into a movie. Which 2 are you going for? I just love the idea of the Fast and the Furious and Godzilla versus Kong in the same movie. That would be fucking
Sounds
hilarious.
Like 2 just blockbuster shitters. I think like Lord of the Rings with dinosaurs would be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
That's just me nerding out.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I think I'd have to Jurassic Park and Lord of the Rings, that shit.
But what about Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible? Tom Cruise.
Also cool. I think Tom Cruise would get eaten now. We can all hope.
That'd be so fucking cool.
Love it.
All right. That's a really good one. I'm going to post that on our Instagram, and our fans can decide which you'd like to see put together and let us know on Instagram. One more piece from a friend of the show, Chris. It's kind of in contradiction to our episode about Iron Man 3, in which we had a debate around whether it was good or bad.
Fair.
So, friend of the show, Chris, messaged us and said, #Iron Man 3 should have been darker, more emotional movie, with Tony Stark having a final showdown with the terrorist organization that captured him from the first movie. I love that idea. That changes the whole sort of perspective of the film, you know, like it completes his arc. He goes back to square one. What do you think about that?
But now you have no Guy Ritchie. What will we do? No, I could see that happening. That sounds fair. Anything really would be better.
Life
Anyway.
is good, but it could be better. Yeah, I love that, friend of the show, Chris. That's a really interesting theory. I think having a stronger conclusion to that threequel arc would have been way more interesting.
Yeah, it did just feel kind of like this thing on its own, didn't it? The only
Yeah.
thing that you got was like, oh, my mic is falling over. The only thing that you really got was Pepper Potts and him getting kind of closure.
And he took the arc thing out of his chest, which he didn't, you know, he could have done movies. Anyway, let's not talk about Iron Man 3. It's a bad movie. But I love that theory, and thank you. So please do send us your fan theories or your memes. We love memes. So keep them coming, and we'll read them out in next week's pod. So thank you again, everyone, for sticking with it. If you like what you're hearing, why not give us a review? Dre, I know you love a review, don't you?
You know me. I love a review. Or 2 or 3 or 4. Dude, make them bad, too. Bad
or
reviews,
5-star.
Bad reviews are cool.
No, don't
I
do that
mind.
because algorithms will never, no one will ever know about us if you give us a bad review.
Is that how it works? I don't know. Don't do it then. Anyway.
We'd love it if you could give us a review. That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much to our social media guy, Lockie, as always. And thank you, DL.
Thank you, Tommy. Until next time.